Welcome everyone to another episode of the One Hood Power Hour. Back again as we are every Monday with my co-host Miracle Jones, and we will be joined momentarily by Kahari Mosley as well. So welcome to this week's episode. We have another great slate of guests for you. Tonight we'll be joined by Ariane Abney from All Politics is Local. We'll be joined by Chante Sanders and Dina Stanley from Trans Uniting, and we'll also be joined by Wesley Porter Washington Gadsden from 1PA. We'll be talking about a lot of issues related to the local elections and the statewide elections that are coming up in the next couple weeks, and how these different groups are organizing around that and incorporating that into they're organizing around a bunch of other issues. So really excited to get into that today. Before we jump into that, as always, we're just going to open it up with touching on a couple other things that have been going on in addition to what our guests are going to be talking about tonight. So first of all, I just wanted to talk about the organizing we were doing over the weekend. As a lot of you may know, today was the deadline to register to vote in time for these primary elections. So hopefully you were all able to do that by today. We were at, over the weekend on Saturday and Sunday, we were at Bat's Barbershop on Penn Avenue, as well as Happy Day Dessert Factory on the north side. So I just wanted to say, thank you to them for letting us post up there. It was a great weekend, had a DJ, food, getting people registered, giving out merch. So thank you to everyone who stopped by and got registered and got some information as well. And then one other thing I did want to touch on before I pass it off to Miracle is that, we've talked on this show a couple times about all the issues going on at ACJ, all the troubles that the Jail Oversight Board has had in really getting access to ACJ and making substantial change there. And so this Thursday will be the monthly meeting of the Jail Oversight Board. And so, in conjunction with a lot of other organizations, Abolitionist Law Center, Alliance for Police Accountability, and some other folks, we've been pressing really hard to get County Executive Rich Fitzgerald to show up to this meeting. He's a member of the Jail Oversight Board. He's required to show up to these meetings, and he's really the only elected official who has the power to make immediate change at the jail. And really address, a lot of the ongoing issues there. And yet he hasn't shown up to any of these meetings as far as we can tell in the decade or so that he's served as county executive. So alongside these organizations today, we released a public petition, we released an open letter, and are really just pressing really hard to try to get him to attend this meeting on Thursday and additional meetings going forward in the future, because that's been really one of the major obstacles to improving the conditions at ACJ, addressing a lot of the ongoing long-term concerns at that facility. We posted the petition all over our social media, so thank you to everyone who signed that so far and shared that around. And just if anyone else can support that in any way, it's greatly appreciated. And so I'll pass it off to Miracle.
Yeah, we're gonna put the link to the petition in the chat. So for those of you who are interested, you can sign the petition so that we can encourage Rich Fitzgerald to come. And the reason why, for those of you who missed our programming on the jail, is because the county executive is the individual who is in charge of the jail, and so him getting there, are hoping that it will encourage him to take a more proactive stance in curtailing some of the atrocities and abuses that happen at the Allegheny County Jail, to which a lot of us have said amount to human rights abuses and violations. And so we do hope that you sign on to the petition. Today's, like Ryan said at the top of the hour, it is the last day to vote. I do believe you have until 11:59 p.m. this evening to register to vote. We'll put the link again in the chat. I myself had to register this morning because I have a different location, a different address, and I had to change. It took less than 3 minutes on the website. If you have a Pennsylvania ID or a PennDOT ID, you just go ahead and put your information online. If you do not, the Board of Elections are going to have to follow up with you. So please be mindful that that deadline is tonight to go ahead and get your paperwork in. In addition, a lot of stuff is happening throughout Pennsylvania. We know that Today Andrew Brown was laid to rest in North Carolina. And that police shooting is still under investigation. We know that there are, this past Friday, Ma'Khia Bryant was laid to rest in Columbus, Ohio. And so there are a lot of people grieving and working together. The president has called on Congress to pass the George Floyd Policing Act. A lot of activists and organizers said that it doesn't go far enough because that just redistributes money to police departments. So they're also pushing the Breathe Act. And so we want people to understand that what is going on in the country, what is going on globally, still hits, at home. We see what's going on with the situation in India with, the corporations refusing to release the patents. So there are still fights, to get COVID-19 vaccines released internationally, while a report came out that said, here in America, hundreds of thousands of vials are going to waste because people are refusing to show up for appointments. So please make sure that you're understanding that what's happening across the world impacts what we do here at home and how we organize and operate at home. So please, please be paying attention to these issues. And before I turn it back over to Ryan, we understand the displacement, the issues that are happening with gentrification here locally. And a lot of people are paying attention. So again, make sure people understand that there's still CARES Act funding. If you need rental assistance, if you need housing assistance, please make sure you're reaching out to the Department of Human Services, to Pittsburgh, Tenants Association, Pittsburgh Renters. They're helping people process these applications. And if you need support, there's still resources out there and available to you. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Ryan.
Yeah, thank you for that, Miracle. And that's a really important point that you made, that we try to emphasize on here a lot, that, the international and the national affects the local and vice versa. And I think that really speaks to the importance of this episode tonight when we are talking about a lot of those, local and countywide and statewide positions. So I just wanted to make that point, first of all. Also, just it's interesting you brought up the gentrification point. Because over the weekend when we were hosting these pop-up events, we actually got a noise complaint called on us on our DJ over on the north side, by one of those, newer locations. So it's, a lot of different ways that gentrification, tangibly has that type of impact on organizing, on communities in general. So I thought that was a really interesting timing for you to bring that up. But also, I just wanted to talk about.
Do we know who called the police on us?
Yeah, so I can't remember the name of the place, or I would definitely put them on blast right now and tell people not to go there. But it was on Western Avenue. It was right across the street. They had tapas, wine tasting, and wine to go in their window. So I guessed pretty much immediately that it was going to be them. But yeah, so on Western Avenue, if you know the place I'm talking about, don't go there. Yeah.
I mean,
don't support that business.
Talk to you. You know what? This is why we have these conversations.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, why are you calling police on folks when you can literally just say, "Hey, can you turn that down a little bit? We're doing a wine tasting, and our patrons don't like all of the noise. Or could you play a different type of music? We could, can decide." And that's the things that we have to understand. I'm living with, like, in this city, this most livable city. But yeah, back to you, right?
Yeah, and we didn't even, they got big windows there. It didn't even look like anybody was inside at the time that they called it. But yeah, they didn't waste any time with it, really. Luckily the noise ordinance didn't kick in until 10 p.m., so we didn't really have to do much about it. But yeah, just, interesting timing with you bringing up and that happening yesterday. And then the one other point I wanted to make, going back to both the elections and all the issues going on in the jail, and just, kind of talking about the intersection of those two issues is, one of the biggest, human rights issues at the jail has been, their overwhelming reliance on solitary confinement, as a means of punishment over the smallest infractions, as a substitute for any sort of substantive mental health care, and just really relying on that archaic torture method rather than providing any sort of infrastructure or sufficient care to properly care for those folks and address those conditions rather than exacerbate them through solitary confinement. And that really ties into these elections, because thanks to APA and a lot of the other organizations that organized around this issue, there will be a ballot measure on the ballots for this election to essentially ban the use of solitary confinement in the county at the Allegheny County Jail. So if you're concerned about these criminal justice issues, about these human rights issues at the jail, in addition to advocating for County Executive Fitzgerald to attend these meetings, another way to go about that is simply to just vote for this ballot measure on the election. We always try to emphasize here that these are all just different tools working towards the same goal, and you need to really be able to hit on a bunch of those different tools to make that level of an impact. So, sign the petition, come out and vote for that ballot measure, organize however you can and however you're comfortable with. And then it looks like we are being joined by Kahari Mosley as well. So I don't know if you had any hot takes you wanted to throw out, anything you wanted to recap about this weekend or talk about the election at all.
Sure. One thing I did want to cover was that they just recently announced that a former chancellor of the University of Pittsburgh, Mark Nordenberg, I just want to make sure I got that right. Former Chancellor Nordenberg has been named the chair of the Reapportionment Commission because they came to an impasse, the legislative leaders, and it appears that the officials on the panel joining Chancellor Nordenberg will be Republican Senator Kim Ward, Republican Representative Carrie Benninghoff, Democratic Senator Jay Costa, and Democratic Representative Joanna McClinton. And Senator Costa and Representative McClinton, are no strangers to the One Hood Power Hour, so we should, reach out to them in the near future and get an update, on how the Reapportionment Commission, because it was obviously an issue that we talked about in a recent episode. So that was just announced within the last hour. Yes, I just wanted to share that as my one hot take.
For those of you who missed last week, the reapportionment, here in Pennsylvania, we lost a district. There is some whispers, some rumors about that, Connor Lamb's district is the district that's going to be given up. And so that he may actually be entering into the Senate race. So there were some conversations over the weekend. So it's going to be very important to see what this new Pennsylvania district is going to look like, how they're going to be drawn, what our new representatives could be, because we could see a significant change up between who our local state representatives are, depending on how they redesign these lines. And so it's going to be something that people are going to want to pay attention to. And I know we have, I believe, if not on Tuesday, on Thursday, we're going to be having a conversation that Kahari Mosley, who's here, actually interviewed some people about redistricting, and we're going to be playing that on the show. On our channels on Thursday, so you can learn more about the redistricting process. And to bring in our guest, I'm going to turn it back over to Ryan.
Thanks, Miracle. So as I gave the rundown of guests earlier, the first guest that'll be joining us tonight is Ariane Abney from All Politics is Local. We've had him on here a couple times in the past to give us a real rundown of how all the elections are being structured, how the lead up to that is going to work. And so we appreciate him joining us again tonight to give us some more information on that.
Good evening. How's everybody doing?
Hey, how's it going? Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it. And if I can just really quickly say, I really appreciate how you all really sort of set the frame for the conversation today. although our organization, our bread and butter and core competency is focused on voting, you raise a whole lot of issues that are going around locally in the state, in the country, and worldwide that people really care about, right? That impact different people differently, and impact their quality of life, and everything from crimes against humanity at the county jail all the way up to how U.S. aid is given out to other countries. And so we try to just underscore, no matter what issue that individual person really kind of clings to or speaks to their heart or they're really passionate about, 9 times out of 10, their vote can have a direct correlation and impact to the outcomes on some of those issues. So you're voting for the county executive who has a major role in what happens at the county jail. You're voting for your U.S. senator who has a lot of decisions on what happens internationally, right? And everything in between. And so, we're just glad that we have the opportunity to again, participate in these conversations and play our role into kind of lifting up sort of the bigger picture of, social justice you guys are really pushing for. So I say all to say thanks for having me back.
Well, we're glad to see you back. Wish it would be under better circumstances. So last time you were on, you were talking about the Board of Elections and the reason why they needed to create satellite voting and expand voting. For our viewers, can you just talk about what happened at the last Board of Elections meeting and what is going to be the case, the situation for elections in Allegheny County, and how that compares to some of our sister districts?
Yep. So the Allegheny Board of Elections met about 13 days ago, almost 2 weeks tomorrow, where they had the opportunity to make decisions about what this upcoming election is going to look like, this primary election on May 18th. And so if folks will have a little bit of a remembrance of last fall in the general election, they decided to mail every registered voter in Allegheny County. They mailed them a vote by mail application form. They also decided when somebody decided to sign up to vote by mail and they got their ballot in the mail, the postage was paid for, as well as they did early voting sites and they did drop boxes. Those were 4 major things that they implemented and instituted in an election that really helped to expand access to the ballot. They voted almost 2 weeks ago, decided to do none of those 4 things. So they will not have multiple satellite office locations. You can, however, go down, the only place where you can cast a ballot before Election Day in person is going to be at the county election office downtown during certain hours. But last fall they had 8 or 9 locations, which won't be here. And then they did not mail everybody a vote by mail application form, and they won't be paying for postage. So that's 4 things that are, organizations like ours and others are really disappointed because it limits access to the ballot for voters. We think about folks who live in the outer skirts of Allegheny County who may not have necessarily access to get downtown easily during those hours when they may be open, right? Where it may be more convenient for folks to be able to drop off their ballot at a drop box at a location that's closer to them. And then we look around at some of our other counties in the state Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You look at counties like Bucks County, you look at counties like Center County, Chester County, Delaware, Lehigh, Philadelphia. That's 6 counties, and there's a few others that are making decisions now. But they all figured out ways to do multiple drop boxes, right? They all plan to do multiple drop boxes this upcoming election. And so we know that folks are starting to get their ballots in the mail now, and they want to be able to know what their options are to be able to cast that ballot. And we really try to push the Board of Elections to make the decision to have multiple drop boxes at a minimum, because other counties have figured out a way to do it. Why can't we? Right. And so, unfortunately, they decided not to do that. It wasn't the right time to do it. but we're going to continue to put pressure on them. We're going to continue to push them for this upcoming general election that's going to happen in November. And, you know, it's really important because there are folks in Harrisburg that want to see all of these opportunities for increased access to the ballot to go away. And so when counties don't take advantage of them while we still have them, it makes it easier for those folks in Harrisburg that don't want to see it to justify taking it away. Right. And so it makes it, you know, a little bit harder for those folks, as you mentioned, like Jay Costa, who's a leader up in Harrisburg, to possibly, you know, talk to his fellow legislators to say, hey, we need to expand drop boxes and early voting, when the people who don't want it can say, well, your own home county doesn't even think it's necessary, doesn't even utilize it. So we got to keep the pressure up on that.
So when this decision was made, did they offer any reasoning or explanation as to why they decided to not offer any of these things? You know, I imagine if a lot of these smaller counties were able to pull it off, you know, the reasoning that it was a budgetary issue would be kind of hard to explain away. So yeah, just, you know, if they gave any reasoning for that.
You hit the nail on the head. It was mostly for budgetary reasons, saying that they don't believe that the county should be responsible for covering those costs. On one hand, we understand that elections in Pennsylvania, unlike some other states in the United States, but in Pennsylvania, elections tend to be mostly funded by counties. The state legislature doesn't necessarily put money into county elections. And so one of the good things that's coming down is all of the COVID funding that's been passed at the federal level. Some of that money is trickling down to the states. And we now have an opportunity during budget season for our state legislator, which comes up over the next couple of months into the end of June, where we're going to try to push the legislator to put more money into the state budget to help counties fund elections on a local level. But, you know, that is no excuse, because there are additional resources that exist out in society that we could, you know, pull on or have conversations with those folks to help fund things like drop boxes, so the money doesn't necessarily always have to come from the county. And one of the things that we're trying to really push is transparency amongst the board, because the thing about it is the meeting that they had 2 weeks ago, they didn't plan to have that meeting. That was an emergency called meeting that only really happened because advocates like One Hood and One PA and All Voting is Local decided to put pressure on the board to say, hey, you can't not have a meeting before the upcoming election because nobody's going to know what's going on. And so the reality of it is they had no plan, right? They knew after the last election in November that there was going to be another election May 18th. And in that time, they didn't come up with a plan. And so they were going to hopefully wait until the last minute before the election, hope nobody was paying attention, hope nobody would say anything. And they were just going to do whatever they want. They were going to do the bare minimum to just administer the elections versus doing what they should be doing, which is trying to encourage participation by giving people more options to access the ballot. But they, you know, they realize that there are organizations that are paying attention, that are watching, that are going to continue to call them out for not doing the things that they should be doing. And so, yes, they said money was the reason, but we know at least 6 other counties that figured out a way to set it up. But they really have to have the political will to want to, you know, give voters what they should have. Right. And I know you mentioned Rich Fitzgerald, the county executive, when it comes to the Allegheny County Jail and those board meetings. But Rich Fitzgerald is also the board chair of the elections board. And he really has a lot of influence on whether we're going to have drop boxes and satellite offices and mail everybody an application and all of these things that our other counties are doing. He has a lot of say in whether we're going to do it or not. And so the same way that you all are keeping pressure on him when it comes to what's happening at the jail, you know, organizations are keeping pressure on him to make sure that he's doing everything he can to increase access to the ballot for voters.
Ariane, I had a quick technical question just for voters, you know, out there. One question I've been getting from folks who are not who can't remember or don't know if they're scheduled to get a mail-in ballot, or if they have to go, could you remind people about that process? Because I know it's a little bit, confusing, for those who may have checked that box, on the form last year, and may be expecting, has the county begun to send out mail ballots, and for those who are unsure of whether they're still on the mail ballot list, what can they do to confirm their status?
Sure. Sort of. So that's a great question. So a couple of things. So if you voted by mail or applied to vote by mail last year, and you checked off the box at the end to be on the annual mail-in ballot application form to come to you, the county did start sending those out in February. So you should have received one in the mail by now. But if you haven't, it's okay. You can call down to the County Board of Elections to see if they mailed your ballot application form to you. And if you can't get hold of them, or you can't, or you don't know if you checked that box, you can still apply for a vote by mail application online or get a paper form. The deadline is a week from tomorrow. So May 11th is the deadline for you to be able to apply for a vote by mail ballot. And you can go, they dropped the link in here at votespa.com, which is the Department of State's office, where you can find the vote by mail application form online, or you can print it out in English or Spanish. So you have a few options. You can call, if you're unsure, I would say call down to the elections office first, 412-350-4500, and speak to somebody for them to confirm or deny if you had a ballot sent to you. And if you didn't get one sent to you, you can apply online at votespa.com before next Tuesday, May the 11th.
Thank you for that.
And just because you talked about English and Spanish, it's also very important to understand that a lot of these materials are not translated for a lot of folks who need them. And so it's another reason why you would want to contact the Board of Elections, because they can route you over to interpreters that can help you with the election process. And before we let you go, I just want if you could just talk about some of the important reasons why people need to vote. We talk about all voting is local. Can you just talk about why it's so important that people really vote, as I say, every 6 months at this point?
Yeah, really. That's a good point. Good question. The importance really is focused around, we talked about the different issues that impact people, that people really, really care about. At the end of the day, there are folks who are in office, who are elected or running for office, that end up making decisions about our everyday quality of life, right? And so if you have an issue where, there's potholes on your street, like you're going to have to call somebody's office to try to get that resolved, to get them to fill it. If you are having landlord-tenant issues, or if you're a tenant, you're having issues with your landlord, there's going to be a situation where the process might end you up in front of a judge, in front of a magistrate, who's going to end up making a decision about your case. And so in this upcoming election, whether you're voting by mail or you're voting in person on May 18th, there are a lot of judges that are on the ballot. And there may be an instance in the future where either you or your loved one is going to be standing in front of that very same judge that you have the opportunity to vote on in this upcoming election, right? And so this election, like every election in a more abstract way, is always going to be about voting your values, right? There are going to be people who are making decisions about your everyday quality of life that may or may not share the values that you share, right? And the last thing that I want to do or last thing that some people want to do is to not participate in that process, to have their voice heard and vote for somebody, and then end up standing in front of a judge that may not share the same values that you have. And they have the ultimate decision on what happens to you or somebody that you care about. And so it's really important, also because it's about It's about people who are in office, once they're in office, being able to hold them accountable, right? And one thing that folks need to understand, and I'm not even sure if I really should be sharing the secrets, but having worked in politics for a long time, well, for some time, understanding how it really works behind the scenes is every elected official, when you call their office or you walk into their office and ask for services or ask for support, they all can track whether you voted or not. They have access to that information very quickly. So as soon as you come in, they get your information. As soon as you leave, they look in their system whether you voted or not. And I'm not saying this is for every single elected official, every single politician. So don't make me out to say that. But a lot of them, when you look at where they are investing resources from a city budget, education budget, a state budget, they tend to invest resources in the neighborhoods where they know those folks are going to come out to vote. So if your community doesn't come out to vote and your folks don't vote and you don't organize that, you tend to see a correlation to a lack of resources and investment in that community. Versus if I'm in elected office and these 10 people have an issue and they want me to solve it, versus these 10 people have an issue and they want me to solve it, these 10 people vote and these 10 people don't vote, I need these 10 people that vote to help me keep my job. So I'm probably going to answer what they want first. Now, that's just some behind the scenes sausage making of sort of how sometimes it works. And so we really try to encourage folks, like really organize, mobilize, not just for yourself to go out and vote, but people around you, so that you can not only see your individual quality of life improve, but also your community and a more macro levels quality of life improve, because elected officials will respond to those communities in those neighborhoods where people turn out to vote, because that's how they keep their job. So sorry to go on that rant, but want to just kind of really try to hit home for those folks that sort of are low propensity voters and are more casual voters that maybe don't vote in these local elections, because they really do matter significantly.
All right. Well, I do thank you so much for taking time out of your Monday evening to join us for our One Hood Power Hour. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks, all. Thanks for having me. Talk soon. Take care.
Yeah, it's always good to have him on the show and just talk about all the things that are happening within the county, because again, it's so much. And yesterday afternoon at 2:00, there was a rally and march downtown calling for awareness and action to stop the cycle of trans violence. That action was called by Trans Uniting, who was responding to a lot of legislation and judicial charges that impact the lives of trans and queer folks every single day. And to talk more about this election and some of the emergency legislation that's being passed around the country, please welcome from Trans Uniting, Dina Stanley and Chante Saunders.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey,
How you doing?
having us today. I will start off by saying, what we're seeing in violence within the in the trans community. Yesterday, right after we ended our action, and got a call that my trans sisters in Boston, a woman did. The violence has to stop. But it's not even just us being murdered. It has to do with just the whole cycle of living, especially here in Pittsburgh and in Pennsylvania, where we don't have no rights at all whatsoever. There's no rights to help us at all whatsoever. It's when it comes to healthcare, housing, and mental health, all of it across the board. My personal experiences just with the magistrate judges just recently. I was down there, I'm a freedom fighter. I've been in the streets. Most of us have been. Last year we were in the streets a lot. And I got a lot of citations for having my vehicle out there and had to go to court. So I get to court, and the judge told me not only was I getting a $500, I had to pay $500, and got $700, excuse me, 5 points on my license, but I had to apologize to the officers in order for this to happen. Why would I have to apologize? And why would you say anything like that? Why would that even be a situation? You don't even know what's going on. But to these judges and to these politicians, like what the previous person was saying, we don't matter because we're not the ones they feel like are going to the polls enough. Our people are not going and being visible at the polls enough. We're not those constituents that are really, really active. So we have to be more active. We have to come together as a community, LGBT and Black all together. The cisgenders, LGBT, trans, everybody have to come together, because what they're doing is they're going to continue to attack us. And if we don't, come together and start making those changes and letting them know that we are here and we are not going to play with you at all whatsoever. If you're not going to do what you need to be doing, then we're going to get you up out of there. And that's just, how it has to be. But we as a community really have to start buckling down and making sure that we're educating our people, and getting a lot of young folks. I think that the young folks are just so misled, especially like young men. They really don't vote. I talk to a lot of young men, and they're just like, oh, that don't matter. I'm not going out here to vote. And just so uneducated when it comes to the voting process and what's happening in their life. This really affects you in your life. But go ahead, Chante.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chante Monique, Vice President of Trans Uniting and founder of the Love Diamond Project. Basically, my experience with, politicians and things like that here in the city of Pittsburgh is not so good. I can honestly admit from my past that, I haven't always been on the up and up scale on the law side. But I try very hard to abide by the law and things like that. And sometimes, as I don't want to say an angry Black woman, but someone who comes from the streets, like the projects and things like that, you get tired of following the rules with no outcome, without no positive outcome. So then you take matters into your own hand. The justice system with judges, a lot of discrimination there when it comes to trans folks, the LGBT community, period, but especially for trans folks, because they take our life as a joke. If you watch the news, you will see that the murders that happen to trans women, like the law always want to try to say that it's because the trans woman didn't let the guy know she was trans, and that's not true. It's different things. They don't take our lives seriously because they feel that the things that happen to us, the discrimination, the hatred, the violence, and things like that, they feel it's our fault, and because we choose to live our truth. And basically, what people don't understand when we protest and when we march and things like that, we're not out here saying, oh, you have to like us. We're not out here saying, come, put your prejudices aside and just embrace us and love us. What we're asking for is to be treated as equals and to be respected. Because when it comes down to it, we are working citizens. They expect us to pay our rent. They expect us to pay our taxes and things like that. And just like every other citizen in the city of Pittsburgh, if we don't do that, we get in trouble just like everybody else. So why don't we get protected and treated like everybody else? Right now, I'm in a battle right now. I'm fully transitioned, but my obstacle that I stand in front of is due to the fact that I have a felony record. Legally, in the state of Pennsylvania, I cannot legally change my name. So I'm stuck with walking around with a name that I don't identify as. And that's another thing. Like Pennsylvania and the legislators and the judges, they make it seem like it's just so difficult because here it is, you see a person standing in front of you and you see how they live, who they are. And because of your ignorance And just because you choose to look the other way, you would force somebody to go through ridicule and judgment and face the prejudice from other people because you just don't want to sign a piece of paper to say, hey, if this person is trans and they're transitioning on their identification, it has an F for female, then they should be able to legally change their name to identify with the sex that they identify. They don't want to do that. And these are some of the things that we're out here fighting. And it's a shame that you got to go through that because we are people. And you have so many people who say they're about helping our community and they stand with us. And then we go and we join forces with them and they benefit from saying, okay, we help the LGBT community, we help the trans community. And as soon as they get where they want, we don't see them no more. And this is what makes me skeptical about joining forces with people who are not in our community, because it's just like, okay, you get these points for saying that you want to help us, but then when it's time to help, you're nowhere to be around. And that's why for this election, it's very important. I was just talking to Dina Stanley yesterday, and she was asking me, she was like, how do I feel about the election? And I told her, I was like, I'm a vote, but I'm not going to vote for somebody because of what color they are or their experience. I want to vote for the person. I want to see where they stand for not just my Black community, but for Black trans women, for the whole LGBT community. What are they going to do to try to make Pennsylvania safer for us? What are they going to try to do to make rights for us equal? Because we have no rights right now. It's hard to gain access to medical, housing, things like that. So what are they going to do to help us? You want us to help you, put you in a position of power. What are you going to do in return to help us be safe and to be treated like the citizens that we truly are? And whether that be Allegheny, Peduto, or whoever else run, I'm all for whoever's going to say, hey, this is my plan for y'all community, and they honestly mean it, and they're going to stand bad.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you all for providing that perspective, talking about your own firsthand experiences with a lot of these issues. And so I just wanted to kind of follow up on your last point, Chante. Obviously all of these different candidates' stances on LGBT rights issues is at the forefront of your concern. But I just wanted to ask about some of the other issues that are particularly impactful to people in the Black trans community that voters should be looking at candidate stances on before they decide to support a different candidate, whether that be different economic issues, different community development issues, anything along those lines, really.
So it's basically, like I said, you have the name change situation, you have employment, you have where black trans folks get jobs, and you get ignorant managers or ignorant co-workers and things like that. So if you get a trans woman who identifies as a woman, live their life as a woman, and they go to work, you get some places where they tell them, oh, well, since you haven't had the whole surgery, you still have to go in the bathroom that's assigned to the sex that you still have. Now, my question is, for that's pure ignorance, because why would you force somebody who clearly walks through this society as a woman to go into a men's room to cause more problem? Now you're looking at possible assault, possible sexual assault, possible hate crime, things like that. So you have things like that. Co-workers who's expressing their discomfort for working with trans individuals, and the manager goes with the co-worker side and start making things difficult for trans people. So that's employment. For housing, you have people who they be all down for renting apartments and leasing out homes to you and things like that by your appearance. And then when you slide that ID to them and your name's not legally changed, then they sit there and be like, oh, well, we'll get back to you, or things like that, because now they see that you're transgender, because here it is. They thought they were about to rent an apartment to a woman. And when they see the name, they're saying, okay, this ain't no woman, and things like that. This is what they go through in their head. I know this things happens because I've been through these things personally, and I've seen other trans women go through them. And this is where, like, with legislation, the mayor, the judges, and things like this is where they need to start enforcing things like that, because it needs to stop. Unfortunately, what is so bad is you have a lot of Black trans women, not all, but you have a great percentage of Black trans women who are forced, not by will, but forced into like things like sex work just to survive, because as a Black trans woman who can't get their names changed or things like that, they can't get meaningful employment to legally take care of themselves. So they resort to the next thing, which is illegal. And now you want to put them in jail because you don't want to make it possible for them as a Black trans woman to gain meaningful employment to survive in a society that it seems like was not just developed but created to hate people that are different.
So I would say policy Chante's talking about a lot is the policy, a non-discrimination bill. So to fight for us to have a bill put in place where there's discrimination against, or that if there is discrimination, they fight against that discrimination. And when we're talking about like survival sex work, again, when you're going in front of the MDJs and things like of that nature, there's different programs that can be offered to folks, such as diversion programs that are not offered to trans folks. And what happens is if a trans person has a record with on it here in the state of, you cannot really get a good job. You won't get hired at nowhere. Maybe not even McDonald's. Sometimes won't even hire. I know a few of the girls weren't even hired at McDonald's because they had prostitution on their record. But then you have this on your record, plus you have to pay fines and restitutions. So how are you supposed to do that and survive? If you can't even get a job. So they make it really hard for us to survive out here without with these without these barriers in front of us, because we can't get jobs. And like and before, a lot of times, if you come into a place and you have or you don't have they take liability. They say they won't hire you. Or if you're not what we call passable, and that's a person that you can kind of tell that they're a transgender person, they take that as a liability, so they will not hire. So hire you have to go out into the street. So more so of just seeing where the candidates stand at when it comes to like a non-discrimination bill. It's like how they're trans person in front of them. Pronouns are a big thing for MDJs. That's my thing right now because there's a lot of folks running. Not only trans folks, but Black folks. It intersects all of these because at the end of the day, we are it's poor in their eyes. So all of these different really intersect. But pronouns, when they're going in front of these MDJs and things, um, uh, misgendered. Misgendering a person is an attack on life. They can leave up out of that courtroom if they're going back into hang yourself, or they can go home and they can commit suicide. Misgendering is an attack on their life. Just seeing, how educated they are or how they want to be educated. One person is running for judge that came to me and said, "Hey, I want to be informed. I want to be educated." And doing that, us having a conversation with him, he went on his own, and one of his folks that are trained petitioned the courts to have their name changed to, the sex that they identify. And that was an amazing thing. A lot of folks at all whatsoever ask us any questions at all whatsoever. So just seeing how informed they are and just about the non-discrimination bills, gays and things like that, like about the pronoun situation, about housing, and healthcare, and the food. And, sorry, my phone. I'm ringing. I'm sorry, y'all. About the disparities that we have here in the city. How are we going to handle this? We're coming up out of this pandemic, and people are really losing housing. A lot of trans folks barely were even being able to survive and be post pandemic. Now they're getting kicked out of their home. I don't have to stay here at all whatsoever. We're paying before, but now you're not even paying. I didn't really want you as a tenant. I wanted to get rid of you a long time ago, but in their head they really couldn't. But now I have we have seen a significant increase in folks who are really in need of services. So we really see where these folks are, and again, all of this intersects because not just the LGBT community, but the Black community, women, everybody really intersects. How these folks really feel about poor people, because again, we poor, and in their eyes, because we're poor, we really don't go out to these polls and vote. So it really goes back into say like how we need to start mending with each other and start making sure that we're educating other folks, our next generation, to go out here to make voting, to get out to these polls, do what we have to do, go into areas that we normally don't go into. I know with us, a lot of times the same folks come into our circles, and we had to switch it up. This weekend we went into Oakland during graduation, and these folks, what was going on? We shut down the whole Oakland. Y'all are going to hear us and be educated today, because enough is enough. But I digress.
I appreciate you so much for coming on. And before we wrap, does your organization have any demands of these candidates, of these politicians, in order to vote? Or is there any things that people should be committed to right now in order to get the support of your organization or other people in your community?
I definitely say about so that is a big thing, because why 2021 do we not have rights? So that to me is the and just to have some type of competency trainings. A lot of them are not when it comes to like issues within the LGBTQ period or within the Black community. So have some type of training. So for me, those are the two big things for me. Chante?
I just feel that we need a candidate who can, sit back, take a look at what's going on within the Black trans community, see the problems, sort out the problems, see what issues they can attack through and handle with their hands, and take them on and stand by their word. Because when it comes down to it, like I said before, you are, by taking office as a mayor, you are saying that you speak for your people. We're part of your people. We live here. We're residents of Allegheny County. So we become, our problem become your problem for you to fix. And this is what I want people to take into consideration, because see, and this is why we always reach out to our fellow Black people in the Black community and every community, no matter what the race is. It's the simple fact, but especially Black women, we let them know, hey, listen, they're attacking us right now because they don't like us for what we are. What's going to happen when they're done with us and then start focusing on Black women and Black men for who y'all are and what y'all stand for? So this is not the time to be silenced, because we're not the only ones under attack. So many Black people are losing their lives for what? For just being Black. So when you look at it like that, and then you look at the like, we're in 3 pandemics: Corona, the murders of innocent Black people, and the murders of Black trans women. These are 3 pandemics that we're going through at one time, and it needs to stop. And right now, these candidates need to take that into consideration. And if you're really for the people, this is what you need to focus on.
I just have one quick question. I know we have to go to our final guest, but and I shared it in the comments section as well, that the recent news, I think about 3 dozen states around the country have been moving about 120 bills targeting trans rights. Is there any particular bills in a particular state that you want to talk about that really kind of exemplifies this attack that's going on? I know folks who track this stuff said this is like the most activity they've seen since they've been following anti-LGBTQ legislation in the last 10 or 15 years. So, would you like to talk about like some of the bills that really come to mind that have really stuck out around the country, that have gotten maybe a little bit more media coverage than others. We're not.
So there was about 238 bills that were put into legislation all over the country after got into the office. A lot of times that's what happens. The first they're going to attack is the most vulnerable folks, which was the and the trans children. So a lot of these bills are about trans children playing sports. There's a bill actually in legislation out in Florida. I'm not sure of what the bill. It's just horrible. So basically, if a student wants to play, they have to be physically, they go to one of the nurses in the schools, and the school nurse has to look at their body parts in order for them to be able to play. That is horrendous, and that should not be happening at all. In Arkansas, they did pass a bill. I think in Texas, they also passed a bill. But these are kids we're talking about, children. They're not developed. And everybody's having all these conversations about, body parts and about body mass and all these different things. Not understanding these are attacks on children. We're adults. It's different. But these are attacks on our children. Why should that even be a thing? Here in the state of Pennsylvania, we're not going to whatsoever. They did introduce a bill into legislation, but it wasn't going to cover at all whatsoever. We fight really hard to keep that out of our house, which is here in Pennsylvania. So we're trying to help us do the same thing, but that is disgusting, and it should not be happening at all whatsoever, especially in Florida, where they're trying to change genital parts to have playing in sports. Do you have anything to add on that, Chante?
My thing is just basically, when it comes down to the bills that they're introducing, I feel that these people are truly displaying the true prejudice of America. They're displaying the true ignorance. And I say this because you have bigger things to focus on instead of trying to isolate a group of people because you don't agree with their walk of life. You have people out here struggling to survive, homeless people. It's just so much. You got police officers out here that don't know how to properly handle situations, that when they go on to the scene, somebody die just for like a routine traffic stop or something like that. You have all these issues, these big issues that need to be focused on, but you want to focus on somebody because they choose to live their life differently. Like, who are we hurting? These are the questions that need to be asked, not just by us, but by our allies, just people in general who stand with us and see us as equal human beings. Who are we hurting by living our true lives and things like that? Just because you don't agree with it, don't mean that showing discrimination is right or it is fair. Because see, my thing is, here it is, we're trying to do everything legal. What happens when people start to get fed up and react in different ways? Now you want to call us evil and brutes and thugs and things like that. So here we are, we're literally on our hands and knees crying out saying, help us. Let us have the rights that we deserve. Help us to continue to survive and stop trying to erase us.
And I do want to add one more thing before we go. This year so far, we are looking at the deadliest on record for trans women murder. Last month, 10 women were murdered. 10 trans women, mostly of color, were murdered in the last month. It should not be happening at all whatsoever. And I think there needs to be more accountability when it comes to government around the safety of us. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I let folks know this is disgusting. These are human beings. We are human beings like everyone else. None of this should be happening. We should not be having conversations about human beings just thriving life and living in their authentic self. But thank you for having us on a show.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming through, and again, our condolences to you and the whole Balenciaga family, because I know that is a lot to deal with. So thank you so much for coming on.
Eyes all scrambled, but it's That's why I came up when I'm like, oh, I can't even really think. That was really hard. We came home last night to hear that, you know, she's like an icon in our community. She's done so much work. She does the same type of work as me. You know, it's really hard when you. But thank you for that. All right, y'all have a great day.
All right, you as well.
All right, thank you. Take care.
And that was from Trans Uniting Dina Stanley and Chante Saunders, who were just talking about, we're talking about the state of emergency for electoral politics, why it's so important for that people are getting involved in, these elections, because for a lot of folks, these elections are life and death, and these elections are going to decide what rights and privileges, people are going to have for the next in Pennsylvania for the next 25 to 50 years. And so as we wrap up, we want to go to our last guest, who is no stranger to the show, who is always out here encouraging people to vote, to get involved in any way they can. And from 1PA, we want to welcome Wesley, who has been spending the past, few months hitting the ground, running, trying to encourage folks to vote, trying to get people excited and involved and amped up about the election. So welcome, Wesley. How are you doing?
I am good. Thank you for having me back. Hello, Miracle, Kahari, Ryan. Can y'all hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got some new headphones. I'm testing them out.
We can hear you loud and clear. So you've been working with 1PA. What are some of the things that you are seeing on the ground when it comes to this local election that kind of differs from the November election?
Well, I'm going to start off with the fact that the Allegheny County Board of Elections has completely dropped the ball this year. Looking at like last year's elections, I'm pretty sure I was out there with all three of you guys at different like early voting, satellite election office events, ballot drop box events, just like really energizing our communities about getting out there to vote. And we're not going to see any of that this year. And I'm not talking about the events, but we're not going to see the early voting sites, the satellite offices. We're only going to see the one location down for the ballot drop-off box in the Board of Election building downtown. And the thing that's frustrating about this to me is that, I'm the state field director at One Pennsylvania. So we represent and do work in Black communities from Philadelphia, Allegheny County, and Delaware County. Across the state, in tons of counties, you see a lot of these county election offices initiating ballot drop boxes, numerous satellite locations, making sure they're notifying their people early on their polling locations. And here in Allegheny County, we're in a really tough situation when it comes to campaigning and just being able to encourage our folks to get out and vote and make sure we're giving them the tools. It's really difficult to make a plan because basically, like the polling locations, they haven't given us a set deadline on when they will notify people of the changes to polling locations. We see a lot every year of polling locations being changed at the last minute, and people being notified last minute or not being notified at all. And same thing with like the ballot boxes, the satellite offices, as well as like the early voting sites. Other counties have it. Allegheny County is one of the biggest counties in the state of Pennsylvania. There is no reason whatsoever that we're not seeing those things this year, except for the fact that the Allegheny County Board of Elections just basically refused to come together and have a public hearing and address the demands that a lot of concerned constituents were having across the county. But so I mean, right now on the ground, I mean, we are seeing and hearing from a lot of people that they wish those opportunities were available. We have a lot of people who may not trust the vote by mail system, even though you'll be all right, y'all, if y'all mail your ballot in, I'm telling you, I promise you. But there's still a lot of people who don't trust it and have a lot of legitimate reasons why. And that's where like the ballot boxes come into play. Same thing with the satellite election offices. Like me personally, I was mailed the wrong ballot last year, and I actually didn't realize I was mailed the wrong ballot right until before I went to go vote. It was at the early voting event out in Homewood at the CCAC, and I went to go take my ballot, and I'm looking for my state rep. I didn't see him on there. I'm looking for the ballot initiative questions I wanted to see, and I didn't see him. And that's because I knew what to expect on the ballot. and everybody doesn't always know what to expect. I was able to flag that and be able to go into the satellite election office and be like, what's going on? Can we fix this? But I had that time, I had that wiggle room before election day to get that figured out. And that opportunity is not going to be here this year for people. And so like that's one of the biggest issues right now that I'm seeing in regards to election law in Allegheny County.
Yeah, and so, as we already touched on with that first question and answer, and thank you for that. There's a couple major differences between the lead up to this election and the lead up to the November elections. The first one obviously being, that we just talked about, the fact that there's none of these same opportunities to have those satellite early in-person voting events, and just that rollout in general. And then a second major difference being that as a lot of people are getting vaccinated, things are starting to open up a little more. Obviously, you still have to be cautious and abide by COVID protocols. But it's becoming potentially a lot more feasible to have a lot more in-person organizing. Even though we don't have these specific satellite voting events and opportunities. So I just wanted to ask how your organizing strategy leading up to the elections has shifted. In addition to not only not having those opportunities to organize the satellite voting events, but now also, potentially being able to organize more in-person actions as well.
Thank you, Ryan. That's an excellent question, because I totally did not really answer the question earlier. I'm sorry. I just wanted to yell about how mad I am at the Allegheny County Board of Elections. But
we're with you. Go ahead.
But yeah. So I mean, last year, was insane for all of us, mentally, emotionally. But we made it. We're still here. We're still here. We're still here doing this, and we're still fighting. Last year we had to completely shift over to in person. And we weren't out in the field except until the point we started having those events. And we were still socially distant and practicing COVID safety protocols. I want to say about 3 weeks ago, we actually launched for the first time in over a year in-person door canvassing. And so it's really exciting. We're seeing a lot of people are receptive. They're opening doors. They're talking to us. Our canvassers, they're knocking on the doors. They're stepping back 6 feet away, which is different from before. Before, I know me personally, I knock on your door. As soon as you open, I'm holding the screen door open. I'm sticking my hand out to shake your hand, what's up? And I'm getting your energy right there, and we vibing. And so it's a little different from there. Our canvassers are equipped with face shields so that people can see their pretty smiles and be able to build energy with that way with people and build that trust and rapport. But yeah, I mean, we're excited to be back in the field. That's one of the biggest changes. And I mean, but that's what we've always done before in the past. The nice thing is this year is that because of COVID, we really learned some metrics and campaigning tactics and learned how to get from point A to get to point B, using these digital tools such as text banking and phone banking. I've done phone banks before in the past, but they've only been just volunteer phone banks, which is super one of the best things in the world, because you have the most passionate people. You don't have to question, are you here for a paycheck or are you here for the right issues? Not a question with volunteers at all. But I'm not going to work volunteers 8 hours a day. And so I really learned what metrics I can get with paid staff on the phone. So we're phone banking, we're text banking, we're relational organizing, and we're even out there knocking on doors right now as well. And soon to be doing some events. We just had a really big event at our office this Saturday for May 1st, which was really exciting. Candidates came, a bunch of community members came, everybody got to meet everybody, get to question the candidates. And that's I'm seeing also because of Act 77, which went into place last year, where we have no more there's no more straight ticket voting. It's all just whatever party, all the parties are all thrown in one for in the general elections. And so I want to believe that we're going to see candidates being forced to have to really go out into the communities and talk to people, because they're not going to be able to just bank on people pulling that Democratic lever or bank on Republicans pulling that Republican lever. They're going to have to actually talk to people and campaign on them, and can't just bank off of, oh, everybody's just going to go vote for me because I'm a Democrat or whatever. And so I'm excited about that pressure that's being put on the candidates, because they need that pressure from the communities, and they need to get out there. You know what I mean? I'm tired of these career politicians. Did that
Yes.
answer your question?
So you, yeah. We're talking about like return to like canvassing. What are some of the issues that your people are resonating with? Because we have the candidates, we also have these two city in Pittsburgh. We have the two ballot measures, but also statewide we have I believe 4 ballot measures. Two about the governor's power, one about equal justice, equal rights, and I forgot what the third one is about. But we have a lot of issues that are galvanizing people on top of the judicial races. So are there any issues that you see that are really resonating with people, or people are really like fired up about?
Yeah, honestly, so there's 2 really big issues, especially in Allegheny County, that are really standing out for a lot of folks. That's the Breonna's Law, the no-knock warrant initiative, and then also the prohibiting solitary confinement in Allegheny County Jail. Personally, for me, as a Black man in Allegheny County who's been harassed by the police a million times, and just growing up, I'm 35. When I was coming out of high school, they were filming cops in Pittsburgh, and I remember getting stopped and frisked like 2-3 times a day. I can't tell you how many times a week it was. But I just I remember those times. I mean, and they haven't gone away. Times are still crazy. And so it's nice to actually, I do this work. I've been doing this work for 17 years of my life, pretty much straight out of high school. Majority of the time, this work is very selfless. It's not for me. It's for the baby's mamas. It's for the grandmas. It's for the people that need medicine. It's for the kids out there. Not often do I really see stuff that I'm like, oh, I'm going to actually feel a difference from this personally. For myself, it's for the people around me more so why I do this work. And it's really nice to see things because like my biggest issue is the way the police treat Black people in this city, and to see things on the ballot that we can actually vote on are really standing out for a lot of people, and not even just me. And that makes me feel good when I see people in Squirrel Hill talking about they care about no-knock warrants, because I don't think people really busting in their houses the same way they are over at Homewood or in Garfield. But I'm not going to go there. But anyway, so those 2 things right there, we are encouraging people to vote yes on banning the no-knock warrants, and also voting yes on prohibiting the solitary confinement. We did a big poll talking with a lot of folks around the city, and we did it in every single community. It wasn't just in Black communities or white communities, or predominantly different. Well, this is Pittsburgh, everybody's pretty much doing the same thing party-wise. But at the end of the day, I was shocked from some of the communities where their biggest issue was police brutality and racial injustice. I just wasn't expecting that from some of the white folks that we were talking to, quite frankly. And to see that like a lot of people in this city are on the same page around that does make me a little hopeful about these ballot initiatives. And yeah, so those are 2 big ones. Allegheny County, a ballot initiative for anybody in Allegheny. Your neighbors are voting yes on prohibiting solitary confinement. Same thing with the no-knock warrants. That's for the city of Pittsburgh. All my neighbors are voting yes on it, and I think all your neighbors are voting yes on it too. So we might as well follow suit and do something good for our city. Statewide, there are 2 things that I'm voting no on, which are the emergency declaration amendment, and I'm voting no on the legislative resolution to extend or terminate the emergency declaration amendment. And I don't know if you guys already talked about that a little bit. I can elaborate a little bit more on those 2 statewide initiatives. So the emergency declaration amendment, basically right now, the way it's set up, the governor has the power to declare a state of emergency for the state. And basically that will last for 90 days. Like with COVID or like any kind of crisis where people's lives are at risk and something needs to happen immediately and there needs to be a declaration, the governor can actually step in and be like, all right, I'm declaring an emergency declaration. With this legislation, the emergency declaration amendment, it would switch that power from being in the governor's hands to being a legislative issue where our state legislators will vote on this issue, and we would need 2/3 of the legislative body to vote yes or nay, yay or nay on the issue for it to be able to pass an emergency declaration. And we see how long it takes for them to vote and go back and forth and throw in amendments and argue and bicker and do all this and that. And like, honestly, if it's an emergency, we need to declare it's an emergency right away and don't have time for the bureaucracy. And so that's why I'm voting no on that, because if there's an emergency and we need to take action, then there needs to be something that can happen. Same thing with the legislative resolution to extend and terminate emergency declaration amendments. Basically, that would take it from being a 90-day declaration, which is the way it is now, down to a 21-day emergency declaration. And then they would have to resubmit and revote and bring all these legislators again together to try to do all this stuff. When right now, the way it's set up, basically, if there's an emergency declaration put into place, because obviously it would be needed to be put into place, that it'll last for 90 days. And if the emergency is over in 20 days, 15 days, 10 days, the governor can go in and cut that off, versus it having to go to our legislative body and they have to go back and forth while, some emergencies, people are dying and stuff. And we need to put a declaration in place to help people.
I did want to ask you a question about a hearing that you participated in a few weeks ago. That was a broadcast on statewide television. Can you talk a little bit about what that hearing was about and your role in it, and what next steps or what things that may have come out of that?
Yeah, so I'm a part of the Keystone Votes coalition in the state, which is a lot of organizations that do work around voting rights. And I was speaking at the I testified before the House for a statewide hearing, just talking about the issues I was mentioning about earlier, Kari, around early voting, ballot boxes, satellite offices, and notifying people in advance before about changes for their polling locations. And just, it's just, there's a lot of people in that hearing that are decision makers or sit in a room and, say, oh, this is what the people need, this is what the people want, and not really basing it off of talking to people. And I just simply went there just to share the stories from people I personally talked to and my teams have personally talked to in the field, and lift their voices before in front of our state legislators to make sure that they understood that this is how you're actually going to impact our communities. And it's not just one community, it's all of us that are going to be impacted by these different laws that are in place or not in place. And just, like one example that I was given is, like last year, we saw the satellite offices. Me personally, I was really upset with the way that it even went down last year in Allegheny County. From a statewide perspective, take Homewood, for example, we had 2 days, 1 weekend. Same thing with any other community of color, quite frankly, in Allegheny County. They just got 2 days to go do the ballot boxes and vote in person early at the early voting sites. But then you have other counties across the state where they had early voting places that were open all day, every single day, up until election day for weeks leading up to them, which gave us the opportunity to actually go out in the field, table outside of those locations. I remember one young man I talked to who never voted, wasn't planning on voting, but he was about the work. He was all about the mission that 1PA is fighting, to build community power, to fight for housing, to fight for education, fight against racial injustice. And he wanted to be a part of that. And he realized at that point that voting was a good way, was a piece of being a part of that. And so he walked with one of our canvassers, Tayo, right around the corner to the early voting site, got registered to vote, and casted his vote right there. And people won't have that opportunity. And we should be able to have that opportunity right here in Allegheny County. And so, I'm upset that we're not seeing the changes that we want for our primaries out here in Allegheny County. That's why I'm putting them on blast right now. Rich Fitzgerald, all of them, like they shouldn't have dropped the ball, and they should have did what the people have been asking them since last year. But we're going to keep on putting pressure on them to make sure and ensure that something happens by the general, and we're going to need everybody's help on that. You know, I'm tired of being on defense. I'm ready to be on offense, but we need more people that are going to be in office that are on our team that are going to ride with us, so that we're more on the offensive than defensive side. But yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done in regards to that. I know they went back to their meetings and they're talking about it, but we're not seeing anything for the primary, and so it's a fight that's happening that everybody needs to be involved in. Because at the end of the day, it's almost a form of voter suppression, you know, like just even simply like looking at the polling locations being changed at the last minute. There's a lot of people that are like, I'm going to vote in person. I still got a job, but I know I can go to my polling place in the morning, vote, and then go to work. And when they go to their polling place and see a sign that is closed and they have to go find their other polling place and they're already running late to work, that person might not vote. And there's a lot of people out there that might not vote because of different little issues like that. And so there's a lot of little things that lead up to a lot of voter suppression. And it's like we have to tackle each and every single little thing and constantly fight them to make sure to defend our rights, to defend our right to be able to vote.
And so thank you for that. I did have one more question, and correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, but I believe y'all used, a candidate questionnaire model just for, picking your endorsements for various positions this election. And so I just wanted to ask, if there were any major overarching issues for any position or that were common across, positions, that your organization was really focused on emphasizing those questionnaires, and that you think people should be really focused on looking at candidates' stances on when they're voting this election.
Yeah, there's a few different issues that we really top of the line for our candidates. And one thing I want to just say about our candidate questionnaires that we do before we endorse candidates, we have a political committee that is comprised of our members from our communities. Most of them are like grandmas, mother figures to me. And so they sit on our political committee. And basically, they're the ones together. We all come up with the questions, mainly them, and they're the ones who actually question the candidates, and they're the ones who come together and vote on which candidates we are going to endorse. And so I just want to put that out there that our members completely run the entire endorsement process, and I like it that way because that's who I work for. It's nice to work for an organization when I know Miss Sandy or Miss Paulette or Miss Sean are going to hold me accountable if I'm pissing them off or whatever. But anyway, and I don't piss anybody off. Excuse my language. But anyway, yeah. So a couple of the issues, like for our school board candidates, I know one big thing that on 1PA has been working really hard on is around getting the cops out of our schools. And so like that was a really important question on there for our school board candidates. Talking about ending cash bail and cash bails for the judicial candidates. And like those were like two of the really big issues. I'm not looking at the questionnaire right now in my face and my members. I'm gonna be 100% honest. I've been really busy with this election, and I can get back to you with all the questions if you want on our candidate questionnaires. But I really feel really comfortable after participating in a lot of the past questionnaires. I'm really putting that in the hands of our members and letting them guide the process and coming back to me and saying, Wes, this is who we endorse. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get my foot soldiers. We're gonna go mess some stuff up. Let's go. Yeah, but I wish I could give you more. I can, but it was a lot, especially with all them judges.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for touching on those couple issues. And really just clarifying and breaking down that process that y'all have used for that. Thank you.
And so, as we run down to this election, we have a lot of things going on. We're also seeing, executive orders. We just saw like the banning of like the menthol cigarettes. That's like, right? That's really like this stuff is like really causing people to get very involved in politics. So now that you're going door to door and you're canvassing, are you seeing more people like getting involved? Are you seeing more people like really politically aware of a lot of these issues? And with that, do you still see like the rise of disinformation that was really prevalent in November? Are you seeing that this go around?
I'm gonna tell you a really sad thing I've seen. Ever since the George Floyd murder, everybody turned to the internet. Everybody went to the YouTube, Facebook, wherever to go see a video. At that point, there was a lot of misinformation being put out there because everybody was going to the internet. I have seen a lot of people go down a rabbit hole. And it like started with one thing that was super relevant and just like kind of like took people to this whole other place. And I'm not even going to go as deep as I've seen some people go talking about aliens and whole other stuff and this and that. But I've seen a lot of people that literally have went down a rabbit hole and are still down it right now. And I've seen a lot of people become politically aware and not necessarily politically informed because of a lot of the misinformation. And one thing that we are focusing heavily on is just making sure we are providing folks with facts, providing folks with the information so that they can make the best decision on voting in their best interest just based off of the facts at the end of the day. I mean, I'm not going to touch on the thing you talked about with like tobacco and all of that because I don't feel like it. But
one time I've actually seen people who I knew were not politically involved get like really politically involved and start having conversations. And I was like, okay, so now you understand why voting is important. Okay. So that's why I brought it up. But I will say, like, as the person, I just started using YouTube about a month and a half ago, like pretty like consistently. And I noticed that once I logged in that had like all of my identifying information, there were certain organizations that were targeting the ads. Like they were, and I was just like, and had I not already been aware that these people did not have my best interest at heart, I could understand why people get taken down. But I was like, why is this like, what do they not know my politics? Like, why is this ad that is being sent to me? And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is how they get folks. And it's just like very unfortunate. But yeah, I think it's very important that people do push out facts and push out information. And like, so as we wrap up, like, what are some things you're looking forward like to this election and like this ending of this, local cycle as we get ready for election 2022?
So what are people looking forward to for this election? I want to really quick, I know we're on time. I just want to touch bases on what you just were talking about with like the YouTube videos and this and that, and like people actually like getting more active and involved. Yes, I have been seeing a lot of that. And it's so important. Like me growing up, I've been doing this stuff this type of work since I was 17. And I remember my first times going to vote when I was like 18 and voting after that. Like I've always had a trusted messenger, which was an organization like One Pennsylvania or One Hood, like some organizer there that I knew cared about my community and my best interest, that was like the policy diving deep into the policy and different stuff that I felt comfortable and safe reaching out to. Like, yo, I don't know who to vote, but I know you're on my team, so who should I vote for? And I think it's just so important to be a trusted messenger out there and provide positive, accurate information to people, because there's a lot of misinformation out there on YouTube. I just wanted to say that like organizations like One Hood, thank you guys so much for having me. It's just so important that organizations like us exist out there. It is, and just like constantly reminding people and showing people why it's important. But what I'm looking for from this election was your question, like from like leaving this election. I'm looking for a good turnout in this primary. I'm looking for people to really understand the power they collectively have as a community to be able to make the changes that they want, and to be able to collectively come together and be able to like just feel and know that they have that power to be able to make change. Like, honestly, that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for, because at the end of the day, once everybody gets that and realizes, oh, we have this power, especially the young folks out there, you know, a lot of our seniors and folks who've been around for multiple elections, they get it. Some people don't, who've been around for a lot of elections, but the more everybody really realizes, like, yo, if we come together, if this is what we want, and we say this is what we want, and we all band together and move in that direction, we can actually get it together, working together. And so people collectively realizing that they have that power and then using it is what I want to see come out of this election. It's not necessarily about a specific candidate or anything like that, because there's going to be another candidate and another one and another one. And we just need to learn that we have the power, one, to run, and one, to be able to get the people in that we need in. And then three, it's not even about, I'm not expecting no person to be my savior, period, point blank. Because after whoever gets in, I don't care if I endorse you, if I campaign for you, if I add you on my profile, whatever, I'm holding your butt accountable. I'm gonna be up your butt, like making sure, like, don't get in and then not do the right thing for my people, like, period. And so, like, everybody getting that mentality, like, yo, together we're a boss. We gave them a job. Now let's do our job and make sure they're doing their job. And if they're not, we're gonna fire them and get somebody else in that can do it right. And it should be us, like people from the communities, you know what I mean, that are filling the issues, that are involved, not, you know, just your everyday career politicians. People power, Black power. I love y'all. I love you too, Ryan.
Please empower to the people. Kari, did you have a final question for Wesley?
No, I think that's a great way. You know what I mean? That's like such an exclamation point right there. You know what I mean? It's just like nailing it on that 16th bar. Like, you don't even have to have a hook. It's just kind of like, just let that just.
Well, I want to thank you guys for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be in your presence, in person, virtually on Zoom. And remember, vote yes to not letting these cops just come and knock on kicking anybody's door, and not locking people up in solitary confinement, because it's crazy. Like, y'all know what people be going through down there in ACJ. And if you don't ask somebody that's been there, and they'll tell you.
All right, with that, we thank you so much for Wesley from 1PA for joining us, statewide field organizer and director. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Monday evening to sit with us and talk about why it's so important to get involved in selection and some things that we can vote for on May 18th.
Thank you for having me. Talia.
Yep. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to the 100 Power Hour. As a reminder, today you have until 11:59 this evening to register to vote. If you are not, if you're not registered, please register. If you've changed your address, please register. If you are 17 and a half, 17 3/4, you're going to be 18 by May 18th, register. If you are someone who is a returning citizen, you are eligible to vote as long as you are not serving time for a sentence of incarceration and you have not been convicted in the past 3 years of any type of election tampering. You are eligible to vote. If you feet on the street, boots on the ground, you are eligible to vote, even if you have a criminal conviction. You can double check with your probation or parole officer if you want to make sure, but you are registered to vote. So please, you're eligible to register to vote. So please make sure you vote by basically midnight tonight. Lastly, tomorrow, Tuesday at 2, what Black Pittsburgh needs to know. We have a great conversation about, what Black Pittsburgh needs to know about the 6 secret lives of Black women. So please tune in. Wednesday, we have This Week in White Supremacy. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. So the 100 Media Network, we're going to be talking about mental health through a lot of our programs. And launching Thursday at noon on Tilt, Julius Boatwright and Mama Brown are going to be talking with mental health providers all this month for the series for On Tilt. So you can actually really talk to people who do this work to make sure you are able to, protect and maintain your mental health. And so we're very excited. Again, also on Thursday, we'll be launching Kahari's interview with the Redistricting Committee, the station wagon. They drove across country to talk about redistricting issues and how you can get involved in their redistricting efforts here in Pennsylvania. So please make sure you tune in Thursday. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our political director, Kahari Mosley.
You're on mute, Kahari.
Thank you for that. I did want to just mention one thing. On May 15th, we're going to be having a Get Out to Vote rally at what is known as Penley Park, but it's technically Garland Parklet in East Liberty. And I will be having more concrete information out about that, but definitely check for us on May 15th, the Saturday before the election. And then also we may be partnering with the Black Voters Matters Fund on a bike kind of motorcade on the 16th of May throughout the city of Pittsburgh. So look for that, but we will be doing some programming to remind folks to get out to vote on May 18th. So look for us on the 15th and 16th of May. More details to come soon. Miracle, you're on mute.
Sorry, I clicked it. But also tomorrow at noon, a lot of folks are going to local bookstores like Whitewell Bookstore to support local bookstores. So if you're looking for something to do, you're vaccinated, or you want to practice social distancing to get back out in the universe, that's something that you're able to do tomorrow. And of course, I always mispronounce her name, but I believe it's Disha. She will be on tomorrow at What Black Folks Need to Know. She wrote The Secret Life of Church Ladies. It's going to be made into a HBO special. And please tune in, but please make sure you're supporting your local bookstores. There's a lot of gentrification happening within the city. But we, in order to keep, Pittsburgh, keep Pittsburgh dope, keep it local, we have to support our local businesses. So please make sure you're supporting your small bookstores tomorrow.
And just piggybacking off of that real quick, while we had a break, I did look it up just to double check. And it was Refusilo Winery on Western Ave on the north side. They called that noise complaint on us without even coming over to talk to us. So if you were thinking of patronizing their business anytime soon, just keep it in the back of your head that, their immediate and first reaction was, to call the police and potentially put some people in danger. So yeah, just wanted to make that point real quick after yesterday.
Just can't even get out the vote like we used to. But we'll be doing more pop-ups around between now and the election, and also every election. Y'all tasked us with, getting out the vote and making sure we stay consistent in off years as well. So this is some of the things that we're going to be doing. But with that, we'll turn it back over to Kahari, who can take us out.
Yeah, I want to thank all of our guests, Ariane, Chante, Dina, as well as Wesley, who all joined us this evening with just tons of very important information and great testimony about the incredible work that they're doing. So until next Monday at 7, everyone stay engaged, stay involved, and remember, it's about T minus a couple hours, about T minus 3 hours until the statewide voter registration deadline. And remember, you can always check us out on our online voter guide, which is onehoodpower.news/election info. You can always jump on there and get onto our voter guide widget, which will also be on our website, which will be launching in the very, very, very near future, maybe as soon as our next episode next Monday, which will have that. So if folks want to learn anything about the candidates, if you jump on our Facebook page at One Hood Power, you'll see some posts going up with the various candidates running for office with the link to our voter guide. So you'll be able to look up the candidates as well as the referendums and the ballot measures that were mentioned earlier. Come up with your own plan to vote, a reminder. So when you get in there and you can remember all the names that you want to pick. So yeah, it's a really cool tool. Please take advantage of it. Again, onehoodpower.news/elect. And with that, we'll sign off on behalf of my co-hosts, Miracle Jones and Ryan White. I am Kahari Mosley, and thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next Monday. Take care. Have a good night. Be safe. Good night.